Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Welcome to another episode of Money Sense, brought to you by the CFA Cayman Islands Society. Really excited to have you join us. We've got Annalise Kier. You're a futurist and you have a company that helps people to understand what's coming and how to do what?
So basically, I help companies navigate the future. I started out in design, so I was basically the person people will come to in order to figure out how do we create products and services that will serve. I mean, even back then, it wasn't so much service, it was more, can we do some design? Because that was my background. I worked with clothing, I moved into the car industry, furniture. So basically from there, I started thinking you can look in a much wider term, and then it became more strategic futures. So basically, a design futurist is what you could call me. And I'm actually in my fourth decade. It started first with design thinking futures. How can you make better design? Then it became more about creating a model, around the trends. How do we gather the trends and how do we put them into a format where we can share them with other people? So basically early trend forecasting. Then in 2003, I had those Time to Think conferences in Copenhagen, and I collaborated with the Copenhagen Institute of Future Studies and became my friends. Because even as a kid, I had looked at television, black and white, and I've seen some of the guys from this institute talk about the future. So apart from archaeology, which I had an absolute fascination with, I was interested in futures, and I didn't really know then what it was all about. But I ended up becoming a designer. But with those interests, I think already then I was a multidimensional thinker, mixing lots of stuff. I think I have a little bit of a robot brain because I can just download lots of stuff, and then I start creating stories around what I see, the different trends. Mm-hmm. In my sort of Futures 3.0 journey, I wrote a book called The Trend Management Toolkit, a practical guide to the future. I started speaking about the multidimensional thinking and how it worked because that was actually on the back of the work I'd done with Toyota. 2003, they approached me, would you like to collaborate with us on a roadmap for the future? We want to look 30 years into the future. And little did I know how to do it. So my husband back then, a Colombian artist, he says, what you need to think about is conceptual thinking. And obviously that's what you do as an artist. So it's a very different way of thinking. But that approach is when I started creating my multidimensional thinking model. And then I created a multidimensional trend atlas, literally mapping all of the trends, scientific, social, emotional, and then spiritual, putting them into a simple system. So you can then take the trends from the different dimensions and start putting 10 trend clusters. If you look at the future of education, what could it look like using that? The fourth arm of how to work with the future, my personal journey is about lifelong learning and teaching the whole wide world how to think, work, and play like a futurist. So 40 years in the make. I think I could say and conclude my 40 years is the day you stop learning is the day you die, as in
absolutely
energy, creativity, curiosity, they're all in the mix, and especially for the next generation. So my dream is, of course, also to work more with even younger kids. I work with governments, I work with the future of the urban setting in Singapore, projecting 2060. I work with the OECD on the future of cities. And then I've been a Copenhagen Goodwill Ambassador for many years, working with Iceland. I worked in Colombia. So that gives me lots of different little clues about that there are a group out there that are hopeful about the future. And obviously a long explanation, but it has been a journey, a process. And I guess the future wasn't created overnight. Sometimes it just happens to you, and then you wake up the next day and you suffer from future shock, the premature arrival of the future.
Right. So you've worn a lot of different hats, and that means that you've been able to connect the dots from a wide variety of different experiences. Yeah. And one of the things that struck me about you and how you wrote this book, I think it's called the Trend Management Toolkit.
Yes.
Right? So it's not just that you're able to sort of see into the future and in various fields, but it's that you put together a framework about how to think about making these types of future forecasts, right? So maybe dive a little bit more into the structure of that framework so that you're not just telling us the future, but you're helping us to learn how we can begin to see the future as well.
So, in fact, I always thought that I had to invent everything. And when I started first creating my model, people said, oh, we've seen something like this before. And I said, oh, that's interesting because actually I created that. And it was really, I one night went to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night and I started to see something of a system. And it was actually sort of, I kept seeing this 8. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, yeah, it's almost like we are this group of designers and we're always thinking visionary, like what people are feeling and the softer, touchy-feely thing. And then on the other side, there's all the people with actually the capital, you know, the people in government, the sort of people who will look at politics, economics, societal, technology, environmental, and legislation framework. They would be all the academics. But surely when you look into the future, you need to create a whole brain model where all of those people meet and sit around the table. Mm-hmm. And that has really been my journey. And very simple, I just created a circle with this 8 in mind, and then I started mapping it. And today, actually, this is a little red box called the Futurist Toolkit. It's a continuation of my book. I thought rather than writing another book, I would actually create those trend cards we call postcards from the future. And they're very simple tools. You can literally take them out and start building a quick model, and you can just draw it by hand. Because if we just sit all day long and look into a computer, chances are we'll just produce more of the same. And with AI as well, we could ask the AI to do the future for us. But is that a future we want? The age of average where everything looked the same? I don't think so.
Yeah, so actually I found that to be a really fascinating part of your talk, where you know, I think there's a lot of excitement about AI. There's some trepidation, as you know, there were many people in the audience who were anxious about what to expect with AI, you know, and I think that's fairly pervasive. But one of the things you mentioned was that with automation and artificial intelligence, there's sort of this convergence on average. Maybe say more about what you mean by that.
A lot of people just think, oh, AI, generative AI, but not to forget that really this journey around year 2000, we had what we call an AI summer. AI winter, when there was no investment. It's already back in 1950 with Alan Turing, the AI pioneer, suggested the imitation game, which he presented this thesis around at one of the really big universities in London. So his lecture was really asking the question, could a machine fool a human into believing it is another human?
Right.
Great question, but it's actually taken 70 years for that to be a reality. Yes, we don't always know whether it's done by human or an AI, which is maybe scary. So Scary Smart was a book that I had a few small, I had like a little table in there about the AI from 50 years and almost being dormant. It actually shot up within a period of 10 years. But we must not forget that this is also looking at, you know, analysis of a big data set. For example, it's great for understanding very complicated systems inside, analyzing data on enzymes and all of that. So the whole medical sector is one of the ones that it's really big in, and also in education. And then we have the more, I would say, consumer AI, which many of us are using nowadays. Kids are having fun with it. And this is predicted, or it actually said that AI is perhaps the biggest invention ever since the printing press. And I believe that. But we are at the early days. I'm very, very concerned about super intelligence, the singularity, as it's called, Ray Kurzweil. I mean, he has very vested interest in also promoting it and talking so much about it. But it's there, and it's a utility, almost. I work with financial sectors, lawyers, insurance companies, also the financial sector on this. And I think 70% of industries will be disrupted, already are disrupted by it, media industries. But also from investment, I think investing for good and creating impact investment around it, because we can use those large language models and learning models to create betterness in humanity. So economics for humans, for me, it's all about a system for betterness, and then actually having more innovation departments around in companies, in finances as well, and also investing in ethical measures, ledger, so we can secure that all of the transaction inside the system are being overlooked and are doing the right thing.
As a leader in design, how do you think about the ability of these generative AI models to create things that are truly new relative to, how humans think about creativity?
So the way I think about it, my team think about the AI, we use AI in different ways. So one of our collaborators actually also happens to be my husband. He's an architect. He's absolutely not positive when it comes to AI. He's like, no, it's not a real thing, blah, 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 blah. But my colleague and I who do research, we never ask AI to give us a result. We put in data, we create prompts. So we feel it's like an assistant, it's like a helping hand to challenge us. I don't know about you, but I would feel very sad just to read things that has been created from scratch. You could get AI to write a book in just put in say 50,000 words business book. You could give it, you could prompt it. You would have very little input and the book would be out at the other end. But I think I couldn't even myself be bothered to read it. So I think there's something up in the air where we have to create a bit of framework around what we actually want to use AI for,
right,
and what we don't want to use it for. So that's early stages as in design thinking. Already, I think it's helped me a lot, especially on a tired day. If I can't get the system right or I can't make sense out of things, it's nice to have a helping hand to make sense out of something that's complex. But I think the human in the machine is key to how you will govern the future of AI.
Yeah, there's got to be the machine itself has no purpose, right?
No.
You talk about purpose an enormous amount in your work and certainly you dwelled on purpose in your talk. And it's interesting to think about what AI is going to do when it inherently has no purpose, right? So maybe when we come back from the break, we can start there.
The Cayman Islands boasts of a long, colorful, and rich history. In tribute to our roots, Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands, is pleased to bring you the Historical Vignette Series, brought to you by Rotary Central. For more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects. The Cayman Islands, He hath founded it upon the seas.
Solomon McCherry Ebanks, 1901 through 1990. McCherry Ebanks grew up in West Bay and went to sea at 16. At the age of 26, he became a navigator and from then was known affectionately as Captain McCherry. During World War II, he risked his life and those of his crew to sail between Cayman and Tampa, bringing food and supplies to his countrymen. Captain McCherry was also a turtler, sailing regularly to the Mosquito Keys. When he retired from sea, he established a store in West Bay and became a farmer, raising cattle and ground provisions. He thus supplied the community with fresh beef, fruits and vegetables, and the basic necessities of life. He was married to Louise Editha Ebanks, and they had 8 children. He assisted many people in his community, including his nephews who were orphaned at a young age and raised by Captain McCherry and his wife. He was a man of foresight who saw the need to invest in his island, which he did by purchasing property. During his later years, the sale of some of the property enabled him to maintain an independent livelihood for his wife and himself.
Radio Cayman's Historical Vignettes was brought to you by Rotary Central. For more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Message us at 925-3261 on WhatsApp today and get active with Radio Cayman.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
Coming back with Annalise Kier. Before the break, we were talking about the role of AI and whether they could be creative. And then we talked about whether they have any inherent purpose. And you have this framework, the 4 Ps, of which purpose is one of the Ps. But maybe tell us a little bit about the 4 Ps and what they represent.
I think let's not overestimate AI as in, is it a creative, emotional, intelligent tool? I don't think so, at least not now. We could eventually see a reality with artificial general intelligence, AGI, but I don't know whether that's around the corner properly. But for now, it's just a utility. I look at it simply as, electricity or plumbing. And if you ask people, in fact, we just want it to work. We want to maybe to be able to create long, interesting samples where we can tell it to memorize things. We can use it as a proper analytic tool. But there's still a lot of, I would say there's still hallucinations. There's things it's not so good as adding up the numbers and so on. I work personally with AI on, I would say, like symbols and meanings and so on, because stories around that is really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But back to your question on futurology, what's in the mix? I mean, we have some simple tools. We have the multidimensional thinking model. We have the trend atlas, in order to get a one-pages of how all of the trends are interconnected. And with the multi-dimensional thinking model, our methodology, we always ask, is this good for people? Is it good for planet? Is there a meaningful purpose behind? And when we balance them, how does that feed into a positive performance model? So those are the ideas of the 4 Ps. In fact, I put them together as a proposition. I did a talk for The Economist 12 years ago, 2012, and they asked me about presenting the next level of consumption. And I said to them, what if people will stop consuming? What will that look like? So I created a whole narrative around that. And of course, with a very simple tool, we can start to create futures that are much more inclusive. What I also said in my talk was the capital P in leadership will be purpose. It already is purpose. There are very few case studies from around the world, but we have companies like Salesforce, one of my clients, Mark Benoit is one of the CEOs, very interesting guy. And in fact, his purpose is to travel around the world to spread the message. He's more an ambassador, brand ambassador. Mm-hmm. And I think this is also key to building trust. I spoke about Yvon Chouinard. He's just the man, basically a sort of a hard person, because he's one of those leaders. He don't just want to be the best in the world. His purpose is to be best for the world. And I wish we would have more leaders like that.
And what is his role for the listeners who are not familiar with him?
So he was the founder of Patagonia Outdoor Wear. And because he was so passionate about nature, he created an outdoor clothing company. In fact, also it's proven when you get out in the outdoors, your creativity increases by up to 60%, especially when you don't have electronics with you and mobile phones.
Right.
His idea was to create a really good clothing brand for outdoors that will last. And he has this slogan, don't throw your old clothes away, bring it to the store, we will repair it or swap it for something new. Mm-hmm. And he's just a few years ago given away his company, or he created a Patagonia Purpose Trust Fund, where they give all of the profit to fight climate change and improve things. And I think that's very, very important to mention that his kids were not interested, so he did that in the company, and I think he was his purpose all along. So he's been on his purpose journey for the last 50 years. I've also worked, I think earlier this year, with the Scottish National Bank on impact investment. In fact, that's where I very often collaborate with people, and it's interesting to see how more initiatives are around that idea of impact investment.
Right.
And where you, in a way, co-create or create a new economic pie, and then you redistribute it, which should basically be what we will be looking at in the future. And I believe that radical system change is what is on the agenda, but whether it's going to be 10 years, 20, 30, 40, 50, I don't know. Sometimes change takes a long time, but we actually can measure that it was change.
We've got AI, we've got robotics, we've got just general automation that are coming fast and furious. What do you see in terms of the role for humans over the next 10 to 20 years? How are humans going to find purpose in a world where maybe we can't tie people's value to the work that they do every day? How does that evolve for us culturally?
Oh, that's a really, really great question. And it's a big question as well because it has multiple layers. So the whole question about meaning of work, already Adam Smith talked about that. And so it's not a new challenge that we have. But I guess that when we work less, we would probably be able also to create more meaning in the jobs we're doing. It's a huge question because already I see different scenarios flying in from left, right and center.
Of course, yeah.
But some of the ones we're seeing are the case study I gave, the island of Samsø, where it was a matter of innovating and dying because all young people were leaving the island. There was no economic incentives for people to stay. So
it was existential almost.
It was existential.
Yeah.
So, and today the positive story is that they became the world's first renewable island with all of they did the first windmills outside in sea. And now young people are coming to the islands. There's a school there. So it's basically sometimes when it's really a big crisis, this is when innovation is happening.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yeah. In your talk, you mentioned John Maynard Keynes, and he forecast that many people would not have to work, after 70 or 80 years. I guess this was in the late 1920s. Say more about that, and then why didn't it quite work out that way yet? And why do we think it might work out that way?
So, I did mention this earlier, but I can say it again. So John Maynard Keynes forecasted in 1929 that by 2030, it was his big forecast, a vision for his grandchildren. He didn't have any children, but he saw it as technological unemployment, so we wouldn't perhaps have enough work. And that's why he forecasted that we would only work 15 hours a week because we will have enough to lead the good life. But in the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what does the good life consist of in terms you, me, us in this room? What are we actually talking about when we talk about the good life? And this is why we need philosophy and maybe a better philosophy of life. And this is why purpose is so big, because we can see that the way we work, the old structures are coming down. We are frenetically hanging on to old structures that are no longer, I would say, applicable to the world we live in, and that's really, really challenging.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned that as we move on from this, 40 or 50 or 60-hour work week that we are used to, that there may be new models that will emerge. And I think you mentioned that some of the Scandinavian countries may be a little bit out in front there. Maybe describe some of the models that they're testing and other models that you may be contemplating or that you've read about that might end up working out quite well.
So, in the Nordic model is known for a model, I think Friedman said that it's a model that it's impossible, it can't work, but he says it does, we can see it works. So we are smaller cohorts, we have a high level of trust in Denmark, we have obviously the Nordic countries, where we basically live off innovation. So we're innovating the future, but we understand that this idea of time to think is important. We also speak about democratic design. We're creating good design for the many people. So happiness perhaps evolves around delivering quality to everyone. It's not for a limited few people, it's basically for the many people.
Yes.
And I think that idea of thinking how you can do better with less is where we come from. And I think we're a very rational society in the north. Finland, which is from the Nordic country, not Scandinavia, so the Nordic country, they're really big on innovation. They're big on technology and education. They excel in that. And now the happiest country in the world, 7 consecutive years. Denmark is high on innovation. It's like water technology, water cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Denmark looks to Singapore for inspiration. Singapore looks to Denmark. I myself was a Copenhagen Goodwill ambassador for 15 years, where I had access to all of the new thinking. They were high innovators on green technology and greening, because we didn't have the oil, but we were first on windmills, and we even built some of the first electrical cars. So innovation is the key tool, our power tool, superpower in Denmark. And I think maybe those are older figures. 3.5% of the GDP in Denmark is basically stems from green jobs and green innovation.
It's a really, really powerful vision.
It is.
I feel like we could talk for another half an hour or hour, but unfortunately our time has come to an end.
Annalisa,
thank you so much for your time and for sharing your vision.
I can talk to you all day. Thank you very much.